Imagine this. 10 years from now, you wake up in a life that doesn't feel like yours. The job, the relationships, the daily routine, it's all there, but something is missing. You feel empty, disconnected, like you've been living someone else's story. Then it hits you. You didn't lose yourself in a single catastrophic event. It happened slowly, almost unnoticed. The late nights spent on things you didn't care about. The yes when you meant no. The small compromises that seemed harmless, until one day there was nothing left of you. The Stoics believed that the greatest loss in life isn't material, it's the loss of self. And yet people give themselves away every day, trading their dignity, their time, their dreams, just to keep the peace or meet someone else's expectations. But here's the truth. Some things should never be sacrificed, not for love, not for friendship, not for approval. Today, we're going to expose the 8 things you should never give up for anyone. These aren't just ideals. They are the foundation of your existence. Because if you don't protect them, no one else will. Let's begin. The psychological trap that makes you sacrifice yourself. They say if you drop a frog into boiling water, it will leap out instantly. But if you place it in cool water and heat it gradually, it won't notice. It will sit there, adjusting to the rising temperature, unaware that it's being boiled alive until it's too late. This is exactly how people lose themselves. Not in one big dramatic moment, but in small, unnoticeable steps. It starts with something trivial. You let someone talk over you, but you don't say anything because it's not worth the trouble. You cancel your plans because someone else needs you, even though you were looking forward to them. You suppress your frustration, smile when you don't mean it, say yes when you mean no, because avoiding conflict is easier than facing it. One compromise doesn't feel like much, but small sacrifices pile up, little by little, until they become the default. At first, you adjust without even realizing. You tell yourself you're just being kind, just being flexible, just keeping the peace. But every time you shrink yourself to make room for someone else, you lose a part of who you are. And one day, you wake up and feel it. The exhaustion, the emptiness, the nagging sense that your life no longer belongs to you. By then, the water is already boiling, and you wonder how you got there. 1. Your self-respect, the foundation of who you are. He stood in the crowded room, forcing a smile as laughter erupted around him. The joke had been at his expense, again. His so-called friends loved to push his limits, testing how far they could go before he pushed back. But he never did. At first, it had been harmless, a bit of teasing. Then, the insults became sharper, the dismissals more frequent. They made fun of his ideas, ridiculed his ambitions, and every time he tried to defend himself, they brushed it off. Come on, man, don't take it so seriously. So he laughed with them, even when it hurt. He told himself it didn't matter, that he was being mature, that keeping the peace was more important than making a scene. But in the quiet moments when no one was watching, he felt the truth clawing at him. He was shrinking. Every joke he let slide, every insult he tolerated, every moment he chose silence over self-respect chipped away at who he used to be. People don't lose their self-respect overnight. It happens in increments, small compromises, little sacrifices, moments of silence when they should have spoken up. They tell themselves that it's not worth the fight, that they are just being reasonable, that standing up for themselves would make things worse. And maybe, at first, it does seem easier. But what they fail to see is that self-respect is not lost in dramatic moments. It's lost in the quiet ones, the ones where they allow others to treat them as less, the ones where they let disrespect slide, not realizing that every time they do, they give people permission to do it again. The reason this happens is because people are conditioned to believe that being liked is more important than being respected. They are taught to avoid conflict, to go along with the group, to smooth things over rather than make things uncomfortable. They fear rejection, so they tolerate mistreatment. They fear judgment, so they laugh at jokes that belittle them. They fear being seen as difficult, so they bend, accommodate, and excuse. But here's the truth. The world does not respect those who do not respect themselves. The more they allow others to cross their boundaries, the more those boundaries cease to exist. Musonius Rufus once said, "What is the point of having great principles if you do not live by them?" The Stoics understood that self-respect is not about ego. It is about integrity. It is about knowing what you stand for and refusing to compromise on it. It is about understanding that the way people treat you is a reflection of what you tolerate. If you accept disrespect, it will continue. If you make excuses for people who belittle you, they will never stop. The Stoics did not believe in unnecessary conflict, but they believed in firmness. A person who respects themselves does not need to shout, argue, or prove anything. They simply refuse to engage in anything that degrades their dignity. If you continue to sacrifice your self-respect, the consequences will be greater than just discomfort. You will lose your confidence, your sense of worth, your ability to trust yourself. You will look in the mirror and not recognize the person staring back. You will wake up one day and realize that you have spent your life bending for others, only to find that they never truly respected you anyway. And worst of all, you will realize that the moment you started compromising, you taught them that they could treat you this way. But you can take back control, starting now. Think about the last time you allowed someone to treat you in a way that made you feel small. The last time you laughed off an insult, stayed silent when you should have spoken up, tolerated something that went against your values. Write it down. Then decide on one thing you will no longer accept, one boundary you will enforce, no matter what. Maybe it's refusing to let someone talk over you. Maybe it's cutting ties with people who constantly belittle you. Maybe it's simply speaking up, even when your voice shakes. Whatever it is, commit to it, because the moment you stop allowing others to dictate your worth, you take back your power. 2. Your financial independence. She had given up everything for her family. She left her career, set aside her ambitions, and poured herself into making a home. She told herself it was the right thing to do. Her husband provided, and she took care of everything else. The years passed, and she never questioned the choice until the day everything fell apart. The conversation was short, brutal. "I'm leaving." The words hit her like a hammer. She stood frozen, barely able to process what was happening. Then came the realization that crushed her even more than the betrayal itself. She had no way to support herself, no savings, no job, no financial security of her own. She had sacrificed her independence for a future that no longer existed, and now she was trapped. This is the brutal reality of financial dependence. It feels safe until it isn't. It starts with a choice, one that seems reasonable, even admirable. Someone chooses to rely on a partner, a family member, or a system that promises security. They believe they are building a life together, that they are part of something stable. But over time, dependence turns into vulnerability. Their options shrink, their voice weakens. And then, when life takes an unexpected turn, they realize they have no way out. The reason this happens is that financial dependence disguises itself as trust. People believe that because someone cares for them today, they will always be cared for. They convince themselves that money is their partner's responsibility, their parents' responsibility, the government's responsibility. They think that because they are sacrificing for others, someone will eventually do the same for them. But life is unpredictable. People change, relationships break, circumstances shift. And when that happens, the person who gave up their financial independence finds themselves powerless, trapped in a situation they can no longer control. Musonius Rufus, a Stoic philosopher often overlooked, once said, "No one is free who is not master of themselves." The Stoics understood that true freedom is not just about having choices, it is about never being in a position where someone else can dictate your life. Financial independence is not about greed or selfishness. It is about ensuring that you never become a prisoner of circumstance. When you control your finances, you control your future. No one can force you to stay in a toxic relationship. No one can make you tolerate disrespect because you need their support. No one can decide how you live your life except you. If you continue to sacrifice your financial independence, the cost will be far greater than just money. It will cost you your freedom, your choices, your ability to walk away from what no longer serves you. You will live at the mercy of others, constantly hoping they continue to provide, fearing the moment they don't. The world is not always kind to those who rely on it. And when the safety net disappears, the fall is devastating. But you can take control, starting today. Look at your financial situation. Ask yourself, if everything changed tomorrow, could I stand on my own? If the answer is no, then take action. Start saving, no matter how small. Learn a skill that could generate income. Make financial independence a priority, not an afterthought. Because the moment you stop waiting for someone else to provide for you and start building your own security, you reclaim your power, and no one can ever take that away from you. 3. Inner peace. She was staring at her phone, her heart racing over a message that hadn't even arrived yet. She had sent a simple text an hour ago, nothing serious, nothing confrontational, just a question. But there was no reply. Her mind immediately filled the silence with worst-case scenarios. Did I say something wrong? Are they ignoring me on purpose? Did I do something to upset them? She checked her phone again. Still nothing. The longer she waited, the louder her thoughts became. It wasn't just about the message anymore. It was about all the times she had overthought things, all the moments when she had let someone else's actions dictate her emotions. She felt exhausted, drained, not because of anything external, but because she had allowed her peace of mind to be at the mercy of someone else's response. People don't realize how often they trade their inner peace for things that don't deserve it. A rude comment ruins their entire day. A delay in response sends them into an emotional spiral. An argument from weeks ago replays in their mind as if reliving it will somehow change the outcome. This is the trap. The mind convinces itself that worrying, overanalyzing, and obsessing will lead to control. But the truth is, the more you try to control everything, the less peace you have. Your mind becomes a battlefield where every slight inconvenience, every unspoken word, every unanswered question turns into a war. And the longer you stay in this battle, the more you lose yourself in it. People fall into this pattern because they believe external factors dictate their emotions. From childhood, they are conditioned to believe that happiness comes from validation, that peace is something that must be earned through approval. They live in constant reaction mode, reacting to opinions, reacting to rejection, reacting to every little thing that doesn't go as planned. But the problem isn't the world. The problem is letting the world decide how you feel. Seneca once wrote On Anger, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This is the essence of Stoic wisdom. You cannot control how others act, but you can control how you respond. Inner peace is not about avoiding difficult situations or ignoring problems. It's about refusing to let external events dictate your internal state. It's about recognizing that most things in life are out of your hands, and obsessing over them only steals your energy. The Stoics trained their minds like warriors train their bodies, knowing that true strength is not found in control over others, but in control over oneself. If you keep sacrificing your inner peace, the consequences will show up in every part of your life. You will feel constantly exhausted, not from physical work, but from the weight of unnecessary thoughts. Your mind will be trapped in endless loops of doubt, frustration, and anxiety. Relationships will suffer because you will misinterpret silence as rejection, disagreement as personal attack. You will waste years trying to change things that were never yours to control in the first place. And one day, you will wake up and realize that you spent more time reacting to life than actually living it. But you can take back control, starting now. Think about the last time you lost sleep over something beyond your control. The last time you let someone else's opinion ruin your mood. The last time you held on to anger long after the situation was over. Write it down. Then, write one rule for yourself. A rule that will protect your peace no matter what happens. Maybe it's refusing to engage in arguments that don't serve you. Maybe it's letting go of overthinking things you cannot change. Maybe it's reminding yourself that silence is not rejection. Whatever it is, commit to it. Because the moment you stop giving away your peace so easily, you take back your life. 4. Your integrity. He hesitated before answering the call. It was his closest friend, someone he had known for years, someone he had always been there for. But this time the request was different. "I need you to cover for me. Just tell them I was with you last night. It's not a big deal, just a small lie." The words came casually, as if they were nothing. But for him, they were everything. His entire body tensed. He knew that if he said yes, he would be betraying something deeper, his own integrity. His friend laughed, mistaking the silence for hesitation. "Come on, man. You owe me." That was the moment he realized something. This wasn't about friendship. This was about control. How many times had he agreed to things that made him uncomfortable just to keep the peace? How many times had he let guilt push him into situations that violated his own values? He had always been the reliable one, the loyal friend, the one who never said no. But this time saying yes would mean losing something far more important than a friendship. People don't realize how often they compromise their boundaries until they have nothing left. It starts small, agreeing to things they don't want to do, tolerating comments that make them uncomfortable, staying silent when they should speak up. They convince themselves that it's just once, just this time, just to avoid drama. But every time they bend, they weaken, and eventually they find themselves living a life where other people's expectations dictate their actions. The reason this happens is because the mind tricks people into believing that boundaries are optional. that if they say no, they will lose relationships, that if they refuse a request, they are being selfish. People fear conflict more than they fear self-betrayal. They want to be seen as good, kind, supportive, so they say yes when they should say no. But kindness should never come at the cost of self-respect. Epictetus once said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." The same is true for those who pressure you into violating your boundaries. The moment you allow someone to manipulate you with guilt, obligation, or fear, you give them power over your life. The Stoics understood that self-discipline was not just about controlling emotions. It was about controlling access. Who gets to influence your decisions? Who do you allow to shape your beliefs, your actions, your sense of right and wrong? A person without boundaries is like a city with no walls, vulnerable to every force that comes its way. If you continue sacrificing your boundaries, the cost will be greater than just discomfort. You will lose your ability to trust yourself. You will wake up one day realizing that your life is no longer your own, that every decision has been shaped by the needs and wants of others. You will feel resentment toward the very people you once wanted to please. And worst of all, you will look in the mirror and see someone you no longer recognize. But you can reclaim your power, starting now. Think about the last time you did something that went against your values, just to keep the peace. The last time you agreed to something that left you feeling hollow. The last time you let guilt decide for you instead of conviction. Write it down. Then decide on one boundary you will no longer negotiate. One thing you will not do, no matter who asks, no matter what pressure they apply. Maybe it's refusing to lie for someone. Maybe it's no longer allowing toxic people to take advantage of you. Whatever it is, commit to it. Because the moment you stop letting others dictate your boundaries, you take back control of your life. 5. Your time. The notification popped up. Just one more favor. He sighed. Another request, another commitment, another few hours gone. He had already agreed to stay late at work, already promised a friend he'd help them move, already spent his entire week doing things for others. When was the last time he did something just for himself? He couldn't even remember. His schedule was full, yet his life felt empty. He was exhausted, but for what? Helping everyone else chase their goals while his own dreams sat untouched. He wanted to say no. He needed to say no, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he typed, "Of course, happy to help." Another few hours gone, another piece of his life traded away. He looked at the clock, realizing the cruelest truth of all. His time was slipping away, and he was the one giving it away. People don't realize how often they sacrifice their time until it's too late. It starts small, agreeing to an extra project, attending a meeting that doesn't matter, saying yes to plans they don't want to go to. They convince themselves that time is infinite, that there will always be more. But time is the one resource that can never be replenished. You can make more money, meet new people, change careers, but once time is gone, it is gone forever. The trap is that society rewards those who overextend themselves. People are praised for being busy, admired for always being available. Saying yes makes them feel useful, needed, valuable. But in reality, all they are doing is trading their most precious asset for things that do not matter. They let guilt control them, saying yes to avoid disappointing others, never realizing that every unnecessary yes is a no to something that truly matters. Seneca once wrote in On the Shortness of Life, "People are frugal in guarding their personal property, But as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. The Stoics understood that time is not just important, it is life itself. A person who does not protect their time does not protect their own existence. They saw that saying no was not selfish, but necessary. No one will ever guard your time for you. You must do it yourself. If you continue to sacrifice your time, the consequences will creep up on you. Your goals will remain unfulfilled, your passions unexplored, your dreams buried under obligations that were never yours to begin with. You will wake up one day and realize you have spent your entire life being busy, but never truly living. And the worst part? No one will remember the favors you did, the extra hours you worked, the meetings you attended. The only thing left will be the regret of knowing you could have done something meaningful, but didn't. But you can take control, starting now. Think about the last time you gave away your time for something meaningless. The last time you said yes when you wanted to say no. The last time you let someone else's priorities become more important than your own. Write it down. Then write one rule for yourself, something that will protect your time moving forward. Maybe it's refusing unnecessary meetings, declining last-minute favors, or setting aside non-negotiable hours for yourself. Whatever it is, commit to it. Because the moment you stop letting others dictate your time, you start living life on your own terms. 6. Your dreams. She scrolled through social media, pausing at a post from an old friend. They had done it, launched their business, moved to another country, made the leap she once dreamed of making herself. For a moment, excitement sparked in her chest, followed immediately by a familiar weight: regret. That could have been me, but life had gotten in the way. Stability, responsibilities, fear. She had told herself she would chase her dreams someday, but somehow, someday had never arrived. As she stared at the screen, she wondered, when did I stop believing it was possible? Most people don't wake up one day and decide to abandon their dreams. It happens in small, quiet ways, putting off an opportunity until it fades, choosing security over risk, listening to the voices that say, be realistic. They convince themselves they will chase their dream when the timing is better, when they have more money, when they feel more confident. But later becomes never, because the conditions are never perfect. Fear disguises itself as practicality, and before they realize it, their dream is nothing more than a memory of what could have been. The reason this happens is simple. People trade passion for approval. Society praises stability, rewards predictability, and frowns upon those who step off the expected path. Dreams are labeled as impractical, reckless, childish. Those who pursue them face doubt, not just from others, but from themselves. They wonder if they are making a mistake, if they are chasing something unattainable. So they take the safe route, telling themselves they can always go back. But they rarely do, because comfort is a trap. The longer they stay in it, the harder it becomes to leave. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to be free, do not wish for anything that depends on others." This is the core of Stoicism. Your dreams must belong to you, not to the expectations of others. The world will always have an opinion about what you should do, but none of those voices will live with the regret of a dream left behind. The Stoics understood that fulfillment does not come from external validation, but from living in alignment with one's own values. To sacrifice your dream for someone else's approval is to give away the one thing that truly makes life your own. If you continue to sacrifice your dream, the price will be more than just regret. You will feel it in the way your days start to blur, in the way excitement fades from your life, in the way you become a spectator instead of a participant. Years from now, you will wonder where the time went, why you never took the leap, why you let fear dictate your choices. And the most painful part, you will realize that the dream you once had is no longer possible, not because it was unrealistic, but because you waited too long. But you can reclaim it, starting today. Think about the dream you abandoned, the one you still think about, the one that excites and terrifies you at the same time. Write it down. Then take one step toward it, however small. Research, reach out, start. Do something today, because the moment you stop waiting for the perfect time and start making time, you take back control of your life. 7. Your health. She felt fine, a little tired, sure, but who wasn't? Work had been relentless, but she told herself she could handle it. A few sleepless nights, skipped meals, stress headaches, it was just part of life, until the day her body decided it had had enough. She was in the middle of a meeting when it hit her, a wave of dizziness so strong she thought the floor was tilting beneath her. Her heart pounded erratically, her vision blurred, and for a moment she thought she might pass out. Someone was speaking to her, but she couldn't process the words. The only thought running through her mind was, "What's happening to me?" Hours later, sitting in the doctor's office, she expected to hear something serious, a diagnosis, a condition, something with a name, but the doctor just looked at her and said, "Your body is shutting down because you refuse to rest." She had spent years pushing through exhaustion, thinking she was being strong, but strength wasn't ignoring your body's warning signs. Strength was knowing when to stop before it was too late. People sacrifice their health more easily than anything else, and the worst part is, they don't even realize they're doing it. The body is resilient. It adapts, compensates, keeps going even when it's running on empty. You skip meals, but your stomach learns to quiet its hunger. You lose sleep, but caffeine tricks your brain into staying alert. You push through stress, convincing yourself you'll rest after this project, after this crisis, after things slow down. But they never do. The brain normalizes stress, and before you know it, exhaustion becomes your default state. This is the danger of gradual decline. If pain were immediate, we would stop. If exhaustion knocked us out in one blow, we would take it seriously. But that's not how it works. Your body gives you warnings, a headache here, a skipped heartbeat there, but you ignore them. Until one day, your body stops giving warnings and starts giving consequences. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "You must take care of your body, treating it with respect. For the mind must be strong and ready, but it cannot function without a strong body to support it." The Stoics understood that physical health was not just important, it was essential. A disciplined mind is powerless in a failing body. They trained not just their minds but their bodies, knowing that physical strength gave them endurance, resilience, and control. Today, society glorifies burnout and praises those who push beyond their limits, as if rest is a weakness. But what use is success if your body is too broken to enjoy it? If you keep sacrificing your health, the consequences will be unavoidable. You will lose energy, motivation, and the ability to enjoy the very things you are working so hard for. Your mind will become foggy, your emotions unstable, your body weak. And the scariest part? By the time you realize the damage, it might be too late to undo it. No one wishes they had worked more when they are lying in a hospital bed. No one looks back on life and feels proud of the nights they skipped sleep, the meals they ignored, the stress they endured. They regret not listening to their body when it begged them to slow down. But you can change this today. Identify one habit that is costing you your health. Maybe it's your lack of sleep, your poor diet, your refusal to rest. Write it down. Then, make one small change. Go to bed an hour earlier. Eat something nourishing. Take a walk instead of checking your phone. And most importantly, recognize that your health is not a luxury. It's the foundation of everything you are. If you don't protect it, nothing else will matter. 8. Your moral values. Daniel sat in his office staring at the financial reports. The numbers were grim. His food processing business was struggling. Costs were rising, competition was fierce, and profits were dwindling. Across from him, Mark, his assistant, leaned forward with a confident smirk. "We tweak the formula a little. Just a harmless preservative. Keeps the food fresh longer, cuts waste, and our profits go through the roof. No one will ever know." It was tempting. The competition was ruthless, and everyone else was doing it. It wasn't outright illegal. It was just a practical adjustment, a small compromise. But that night, as Daniel lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the decision pressed down on him. He thought about his father, the man who built this company from scratch, who had always said, "Money is easy to make, but trust is once." He imagined a family unknowingly consuming chemicals they shouldn't. He pictured himself, years later, justifying his choices, convincing himself it wasn't a big deal. That's how it starts. One small step off the path, and suddenly you don't recognize who you've become. Morning came. Mark entered with a grin. "So, boss, are we doing this?" Daniel exhaled. The temptation still lingered, but now it was nothing more than an echo of weakness. No. The world doesn't steal your morality all at once. It chips away at it, piece by piece. It offers comfort in exchange for compromise. It tells you that principles are naive, that winners do whatever it takes. It whispers, "Just this once." And when you give in, the next time is easier. Until one day you wake up and realize you're no longer in control, someone else is. Seneca once wrote, "We should not decide who is right by who has the most power, but by who has the most truth." A man who sacrifices his morality for power, wealth, or approval may gain the world, but he will never own himself. He will live looking over his shoulder, fearing exposure, knowing that beneath the success is a foundation built on lies. If you keep making small moral compromises, you won't just lose your reputation, you'll lose your ability to trust yourself. And no amount of success will ever replace the quiet shame of knowing you betrayed who you were meant to be. But you can change that right now. Think of the last time you let something slide, the last time you told yourself it wasn't a big deal. Write it down. Then set one moral boundary you will never cross again, no matter what. Maybe it's refusing to lie, no matter how convenient. Maybe it's walking away from people who manipulate you. Maybe it's speaking up when you see something wrong. Because the moment you choose integrity over convenience, you take back control of your life. The life you have today is the result of the choices you made yesterday, and the life you will have tomorrow depends on the choices you make now. So what will you choose? Will you continue sacrificing the most important parts of yourself just to please others, to fit in, to avoid discomfort? Or will you reclaim your power, your self-respect, your time, your dreams, and start living on your own terms? This is your wake-up call. No more shrinking, no more compromising, no more giving away what makes you, you. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the one thing you've sacrificed for too long that ends today? Drop it in the comments. Your story might be the reason someone else finally finds the strength to stop settling. If this video resonated with you, hit the like button. It tells YouTube this is the kind of content worth sharing. Subscribe for more insights that challenge your thinking and push you toward greatness. And most importantly, share this with someone who needs to hear it. I'll leave you with this. How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Epictetus. Think about it, then act, because your future self is watching.